Well, the Samu strike in eThekwini does now appear to be over, and of course there's a huge amount of anger and frustration at some of the consequences of that particular strike. Meanwhile, in Joburg, there have been areas with no water for the last 10 days. In fact, this morning the mayor of Joburg, Kabelo Gwamanda, said one of the reasons for that was that a valve at Rand Water had been left in the wrong position. In so many other places, there have been long-running water issues in Inanda, in KZN, in Mangaung at times, in Giriani, in Limpopo, of course. Miyelani Holeni is the Group Chief Advisor for the Miyelani Consulting Group. Miyelani, good afternoon to you and thanks for your time. We seem to be having huge problems with infrastructure in so many councils at the moment, and it just looks like sort of a cascading set of failures. Is there any reason why this is all happening now?
Thank you, Stephen. Of course, I think we need to treat it exactly as that. Previously, it would have been a sporadic type of reporting of outages of water, but we're starting to see more and more, even in the critical areas. So we're seeing metros now joining in the kind of disruptions of water. Previously, we would have seen more your locals, where perhaps they have to rely on the district or they run their own water service. But in this case, when we start seeing metros, not so long it was eThekwini, now we are talking the city of Johannesburg. So this has a huge impact with regards to how the infrastructure, conditions of the infrastructure, and it puts a lot of questions on the condition of the infrastructure. And in this case, as you can see, it's between Rand Water as well as the metro. City of Johannesburg, and I think it calls into question the fact that is the infrastructure still in a state where it can carry water? Has it been renewed? Has it been maintained? Perhaps it's time to look at how that infrastructure can be improved to be able to prevent the disruptions that we are seeing. But it certainly doesn't augur well for business because of the disruptions on top of what electricity, the outages of electricity are doing to business. So that is a point of concern with regards to the current state of the infrastructure.
It can look sometimes like officials don't know what to do. I mean, we haven't heard from Rand Water and their response to this issue around the valve in the wrong position. In Verulam, residents there tell us that in that part of eThekwini, officials didn't even know where their infrastructure actually was. They didn't know where underground things needed to be maintained. I find that amazing. How does that dynamic develop, where officials don't actually know what has to be done?
Stephen, this boils down to proper infrastructure or master planning for infrastructure. So if cities are keeping up to date with what their infrastructure looks like, especially the additions that would take place from time to time, there always must be a master plan that carries out. And that master plan is not just a 1 year or 2 year, 3 year plan. It's a 30-year to 50-year plan that drives how the city is going to grow. So typically, what the city planners must be doing is to plan how the city is going to develop, whether it's going to go further north or east or west or whichever direction it's going to go in. There ought to be much more detailed planning that is put in place, as well as sketching of how the pipelines vis-a-vis the electricity, if there's gas, if there's telecoms, and so on. So there's a detailed planning aspect, which I think we are calling into question now, that if municipalities, especially the metros, the locals, and the ones that have very strong city planning or town planning departments ought to be looking at how their GIS or geographical information systems are carrying out or that information or storing that information. Is it perhaps a loss of information that is there, or is it perhaps a laxity in terms of planning or capturing the new developments that are coming up? So those are the aspects which I think if you go back to eThekwini correctly, so now we're coming back to Johannesburg. Some of the responses, I think, are quite, staggering, and I think don't build confidence within the consumer, because as consumers, as well as business and industry and so on, we rely on the water departments to be able to bring water, which is critically required for driving business or industry or and so on and so forth. The issue here is the planning functions within municipalities insofar as they keep the diagrams and how they plan the city so that they can know to the last centimeter where the valves are, whether it's the pressure reducing valves and so on. So I think that is a critical skill that we are seeing maybe absent within the municipalities.
There's several risks that, and I mean, as always in a crisis, it's a horrible analogy, but it's like a plane crash. Several things go wrong all at the same time, and often because of one big stress on a system. So if, for example, you have a water problem in Joburg or Verulam or Ananda or Guyana now, what that means then is that you don't do the long-term planning. You're spending all your resources on just resolving that short-term problem. So it would seem to me, actually, there'll be less long-term planning simply because people are dealing with a crisis. At the same time, I worry that middle-class people who've been paying rates might suddenly stop paying their rates because they're just getting nothing for it.
So what we've seen, Stephen, is a critical reduction in the CAPEX, capital and expenditure within municipalities. We've also seen a reduction of the money that is spent in repairs and maintenance. And those are two critical numbers within the budget, because the repairs and maintenance keeps your current infrastructure in a state of in a good state, functional state, that it can be at least, utilized. The CAPEX, builds the new infrastructure. Now, if those two numbers, at least in this case, we would plead with municipalities to at least have the repairs and maintenance at the required level, because we've seen an inordinate amount of money going into CAPEX where there was not a plan of at least budgeting for the repairs of maintenance of that infrastructure. And that perhaps it could be something that we are seeing, that the repairs and maintenance budgets are not following how the CAPEX was expended over the time to build the new infrastructure. So it's wonderful for municipalities and metro building new infrastructure. In this case, they need to also look at, how that repair and maintenance goes with making sure that, they're keeping the infrastructure going. So I think the two key numbers are there. So planning in this case is an issue. The issue of the skills, which is capability, is an issue. But also the financial side of things, is also a problem, as we are seeing in the way that, the repairs and maintenance budgets are going and the capital budgets are going. So it is important that, going into the new financial year, those two numbers are watched, critically, and at least are spoken about, and at least put to meet the demands of, the current situation. And we have not spoken about the growing part of the city, and that's where the CAPEX ought to come in.
eThekwini is run by a coalition, so is Joburg, so is Ekurhuleni. There was supposed to be a vote on the mayor of Ekurhuleni yesterday. There wasn't. There's sort of political paralysis there. Is politics to blame? I mean, we're in a kind of feeling at the moment, I think, where everyone just wants to blame the nearest politician. They almost don't care which party they come from. But is politics to blame for where we are?
Well, Stephen, I think in this case, if we were to blame politics, or lay the full blame on politics, I think it would be, it would not be accurate, because a municipality has a municipal manager. It has the side which must be run, in a proper state. So who does the service delivery are the officials who must be driving the day-to-day aspects and the operational issues of the municipality. But if the problem was the fact that, an adjustment budget was not been passed, such that it would enable the officials to be able to table the right budgets to go and allocate, to various projects, then we can see how, the politics also could be playing a role. So within a municipality, obviously, I'm tabulating the fact that there is the political side and the administrative side. The administrative side also must do what they need to do on a daily basis to be able to drive the whole service delivery issue. The political side must be able to approve and provide, oversight. But if there's a combination of those two factors where the political side have not perhaps, approved, certain budgets, and the administrators are not able to do any work, then, the blame can certainly be apportioned, whether equally or more in terms of, who has delayed the process.
Miyelani Holeni, thank you as always. Group Chief Advisor at the Ntiso Consulting Group. Really appreciate the time.